San Diego, particularly taking a look at what leadership looks like during a time of crisis, whether that be the pandemic we're facing with COVID-19, but also the pandemic we're facing with institutionalized racism. I'm going to be sharing some information about the work we do, but also some critical data points about workforce development, economic opportunity, and racial justice for all. So let's dive into it. If you want to go to the next slide. What I'm going to be talking about is a little bit who we are as an organization. What does San Diego's economy look like since COVID-19, and where are we at as a community today? And in leading up to this conference, I thought it was critical to pull in information about the topics that are top of mind for so many of us right now, topics of racial injustice, not only for Black, Indigenous people of color, but for women in our community throughout the region as well. And how does that relate to the strategies we're doing as an organization, and how is that relevant to nonprofits across the community? I do want to say that I've saved time at the end of my presentation for questions, but if you have questions at any point on any of the information I'm sharing or the work I do, please type in questions. I'll be able to see them as I'm presenting, and will do my best to respond to your questions live. All right, so as we go to the next slide, and the next slide after that, let's talk about who are we as the Workforce Partnership. Our mission is to empower job seekers to meet the current and future workforce needs of employers in San Diego County. If you go to the next slide, here's an infographic that explains what we do. We are a 501c nonprofit. But we like to call ourselves a quasi-governmental agency. We're kind of an odd duck in the community in that we are an independent nonprofit, but we're authorized by the county and city of San Diego to shepherd and steward federal funds for our region, aimed to serving job seekers and to serving our region's employers. So we bring this money. Being a 501c nonprofit, not only do we shepherd these federal and state funds, but we also are able to receive private and business philanthropic funding. When we get these grants, we bring the community together. So we have our boards, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. We also conduct research to identify skills gaps. Critical community programs that are relevant to job seekers can only be relevant if they're informed by what are our in-demand jobs? What are the available career opportunities out there for folks in San Diego to aspire to and to invest our job training programs in? So we convene a ton of partners like yourself, other nonprofits, CBOs, experts in this field to deliver these programs. And then we do just that. We deliver programs that serve young people in San Diego. We serve adults. If you go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about what these service strategies look like. So there's job seeker services. We do career consulting, job placement. We help pay for education and training, paid work experience. We also have solutions for San Diego businesses, whether a business is looking to hire, to diversify their talent pipeline, they're looking for training and upskilling. We have wage subsidy programs to help businesses hire and retain employees from the communities we're serving. We think of ourselves as a big collaborator in the community. So we do regional planning with other institutions like our school districts, community colleges, other public agencies like County Health and Human Services, City of San Diego Economic Development Department. We bring together thought leaders through convenings like this one, this very conference you're in. We host conferences ourselves. And we try and push out our information through newsletters and action. And all of that research that I shared as well, a big part is informing the community about what workforce development. So a lot of that research I'm going to share today, there is tons more available on our website, and I'll share that in future slides. As we go to the next slide, just take a look at For job seekers, where are we in the community? We have 8 career centers where any member of our community can walk in. Walking into a community center is not so much a thing anymore with COVID-19. We are temporarily closed because of the pandemic, but proud to say that all of our services have moved into a virtual environment. And in later slides, I'll talk more about what does that virtual environment look like. Not just from a lens of us providing our programs, but what are useful tools that I think any nonprofit professional could be implementing to reach the community in an online environment. The map we're showing, it shows you, it's a heat map that shows unemployed individuals and addresses of our customers across San Diego. The black dots are where we fund partners and have opportunities for the community to engage with us. So those are all of the locations. We try and mirror our programs and services based on the need we see across the county. As we go to the next slide, here's a look at some of our current funded partners. And this is always changing. As we receive new grants and new funding opportunities, we conduct procurements and release our funding. We also run some of our programs in-house and have direct services team that are actively engaging with job seekers. Next slide. Again, the bulk of our funding and resources are those career centers we're talking about. So here's some of a look at what that looks like. We offer workshops, training opportunities, one-on-one case management. We also offer supportive services, so helping job seekers who might need funding to help pay for a suit for an interview like this one, or bus passes because they need transportation to get to that job interview, or vouchers for childcare. We consider ourselves an agency that offers tools that empower and enable some of our most vulnerable community members to get access to those critical services, to get that foot in the door for employment. If we go to the next slide, while we are here to serve all San Diegans, the primary source of our funding is focused on serving the individuals that we say have barriers to work. And when I say some of our most vulnerable community members, this is what we're talking about. This is where our funding is really geared to help individuals like veterans, justice involved, individuals who may be homeless, people with disabilities. Our funding, enrollment, and eligibility is really structured around serving those with the highest need based on barriers to work. If we go to our next slide. So while we have specialized programming for those who have those highest barriers, we are available and here for any and all people. And we know with the pandemic that's happening right now and really the tailspin that put our economy in, we're seeing unprecedented levels of unemployment, and it's truly a crisis. And part of the theme and the title of this presentation is doing more with less, dealing with grant funding that comes and goes when we as nonprofit professionals are seeing unprecedented demand for our services. So what do we do in the face of that? And that's going to be one of the themes that I'm talking about, because this is a look at when this slide shows we have, back when our centers were open, about 7,000 customers in the month of May in 2019, and that's when unemployment was at 3%. Unemployment now is hovering anywhere between 15 to 20%. So tens of thousands of job seekers are in critical need to brush up that resume, find job openings, get trainings they need, maybe to switch into a new industry or occupation, and that's where we come in. We know we're not the only organization that's providing workforce development services. We're one of many. We're part of a continuum of care throughout the county, and so we love to have opportunities to engage with folks in conferences like this one so that we can share our ideas, share our practices, learn from each other. So again, that's another shameless plug for questions. Please submit them if you have them as I'm presenting. Going on to the next slide. We are a dual board system. So here's a look at our two boards. We have a county and city board made of our elected officials, but also our big board, our workforce development board, is made up of more than half the members are made from members of the business community. So we are creating programs to serve job seekers to get into careers in some of our largest industries, our largest sectors, which in San Diego, those priority sectors are advanced manufacturing, energy, finance, healthcare, law, technology, information communication technology, tourism and hospitality. Those are some of the biggest industries we're here to serve and here to engage the community with. So our board members reflect those largest industries in San Diego County. As you go on to the next slide, I want to get into what our economy looks like in COVID-19. That's a look at who we are as an organization. What are we doing right now? Where are we at as a community right now in San Diego? So let's jump into the next slide. I will say all of the data that I'm sharing with you today is available on our website, workforce.org/research. Again, if you just go to workforce.org, that you can find all of the information about our programs, our services, but the data I'm getting to specifically here today can be found at that link right there. So as we look at unemployment, what has it been looking like? Right now, the latest job numbers we have in are from April, and that's putting unemployment at about 14% for our nation right now. If you go to the next slide, we also track what is the labor participation rate. Fun fact about unemployment numbers, and those of you who follow the news might be seeing headlines coming from the Department of Labor now about unemployment dropping, and that's true, but we all know that there's many ways to measure unemployment. It's important when talking about unemployment numbers to look at labor force participation rate. When we share unemployment data, what's often not talked about is that unemployment rate of 14% doesn't include, sadly, all of the people who've given up. People who've stopped actively looking for work because they feel that what the jobs they're applying for aren't there. Maybe they have health concerns about getting back to work and don't want to get back into the job market because of the pandemic. Unemployment rates don't capture those people who are out of the job market and have not been searching for over 6 months. So unemployment rates are actually quite higher. And another way to look at labor market data is to look at this participation. And it is not a good indicator. You see, as we got to the 90s and 2000s, labor participation rates were reaching all-time highs. We're going back to a much lower participation rate of 60%, which is not good for our nation as a whole. Let's take a closer look at California. This graph is startling, and I think accurately depicts the shock and the unemployment numbers that we saw with COVID-19. If you look at that spike on the far right side of the graph, that is when COVID-19 hit. And the gray area is the time frame in the Great Recession, so that's showing where California was during the most recent recession and where we were in recent months. If you look at the trend line, it's hard to see on that right side of April and May. The trend line is trending down. But if you look at that number, the latest numbers we have for California on May 9th, we're still seeing unemployment at 4 or 5 times greater, the highest point in 2010 during the Great Recession. So while things are getting better and numbers are going down, I cannot emphasize enough the criticality of where we're at as a workforce and an economy and the importance of connecting people back to work at this time. Let's take a closer look just to San Diego and the workers who've received layoff notices. So another fun fact about us at the Workforce Partnership is by law, we are required to receive Physical layoff notices. Before an employer notifies their workers that a layoff is coming, we must be notified so that we can engage with that workforce about to be laid off and make them aware of our career centers, make them aware of our programs and services. And this is a look at those notices that we've received. And comparing that trend line now, we are somewhere upwards of 80,000 plus laid off workers that we've received notices for in the past few months. And I mentioned this in relation to months year over year since 2015, because sometimes people, when talking about unemployment numbers, will say, well, there's seasonal spikes and sometimes there's seasonal adjustments, things are worse. This shows you the entire season, the entire year. We're dealing with unprecedented numbers here, and it is quite literally off the charts. The other sad truth about layoff notices that we receive is this doesn't include small businesses. So if a business is 50 employees or less, they are not required by law to notify us. So there's a great deal more layoff notices that we don't receive for those small businesses. And more than half of San Diego businesses are considered small businesses or 50 employees or less. Going on to the next slide, another thing we like to focus on is how is this related to industries? What is our workforce looking like from an industry perspective? No surprise, the largest hits of unemployment in our region because of the COVID-19 pandemic are in the hospitality, restaurant and bar, retail, arts and entertainment, recreation, transit, nonprofit. The industries that saw the highest growth, the in-demand occupations and our priority sectors as a region, much like the Great Recession, remained in demand, remain priority sectors. So sectors like manufacturing, life sciences, biotech, tech, digital media, those are all strong industries that we call recession-proof. So even in a time of historic unemployment levels, those are industries that are still hiring. And we want to share to all nonprofits that as we're trying to support individuals and getting back in the economy, that's where we should be focusing our training and job placement efforts in those industries. Again, another look at jobs by hiring. This is particular to roles and where you're seeing hiring happening in a landscape of COVID-19. Where are there job postings in San Diego County? The biggest changes we're seeing was a huge increase in janitorial and cleaning services, as you would expect during a pandemic. Next slide. Another way to look at unemployment numbers is by population. How is employment impacting people from male to female, by race or ethnicity, and by education level? And as you'd expect, unemployment during this crisis has disproportionately impacted those with lower education levels. Next slide. Another key indicator that our San Diego community should be thinking about is who can work from home, who was available and readily had access to do their job during a pandemic environment. Again, I don't think this data is a surprise to anyone, but I think emphasizes the importance of nonprofits focusing on low-income communities and individuals who are not making above that 65,000 mark, because for the most part, those are the individuals who can't work from home or whose jobs were impacted more. So, typically as a workforce development agency, when we're sharing information at conferences, we share a lot about the work we're doing. We share a lot about the labor market data. But something that has become increasingly apparent to us over the past few years is the huge disconnects by race and ethnicity, particularly in young San Diegans. San Diegans, 16 to 24-year-old, who should be in school or working. And so I want to share some data that we use. I call it workforce justice or racial justice. How do we recognize that there are extreme disparities in access to education, access to wealth, access to job opportunities, that our systems have created injustices and discrimination for groups in our community? And therefore, as nonprofit professionals like we are, how can we look at this data and translate that into investments to reduce that disconnection, reduce that unemployment? And as I say, how can we invest? How can we not only talk the talk about inequality, but walk the walk, put our money where our mouth is, and really focus in communities of highest need? So I'm going to share some data that informs our thinking and our strategy. Before I do, I wanted to share our organization's 5 strategic pillars, because salient to the conversation of serving communities in highest need is how do we do that in an overall strategic lens? First is job quality and recognizing that not all jobs are created equal. I often remark, if our economy was tanked and our largest corporations needed a bailout after 1 or 2 months of closing its doors, we weren't as strong an economy as we thought we were. If folks are making more with unemployment benefits than they were working jobs, maybe we did not have the workforce and the quality jobs that we need. So we have to look at placing people in careers that have meaningful wages, support career growth, that not only elevates the person in that job, but elevates the bottom line, make that a job that someone wants to grow and spend a lifetime in. Another pillar of ours is 2-generation solutions. So we recognize that we need to address not just the need of an individual worker, but their entire family. Many and more often than not these days, particularly in regions like ours with housing costs as high as they are, we're seeing multiple generations of families living together. So it's not about how can we just create a career pathway for mom or a career pathway for dad, but for their children, for the grandparents, for everyone, and recognize if we aren't serving the entire family, we cannot break that cycle of poverty and create the income mobility that we want to see as a community. Outcomes-based funding and outcomes-focused funding is, we say where money meets mission. So instead of looking at funding partners for just basic cost reimbursement, how can we promote funding mechanisms that reward impact? Not just deliverables, was a job created, but did we make long-term impact in our community and base our funding structure for our programs in that way? Inclusive business growth. Developing a workforce that is inclusive, competitive, and promotes economic growth, not just for that business, but for all of us as a community. And recognizing that being inclusive, having a diverse workforce for businesses is a bottom line issue and helps them build a stronger business model. And population-specific interventions. This is the aspect of our strategic pillars that I really want to focus on in the next few slides. How can we design programs that are human-centered and recognize that a one-size-fits-all approach isn't going to solve the injustices, isn't going to solve the fact that 1 in 5 African-American youth, Black youth in San Diego are disconnected from work and school compared to 1 in 20 white or Caucasian young people in San Diego County. That is something that needs to be addressed, and we must recognize that we need community-specific, population-specific interventions that acknowledge and recognize that there are injustices and that some communities have higher barriers to opportunities than others. That's what I'm going to dive into in these next few slides. So moving on, race and ethnicity is one thing, but I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the gap between genders in the workforce. And if you look at other cities, large metropolitan areas like ours across the country, we see one of the lowest female employment levels and workforce participation than any other city. Part of that is two-generational support, right? If you're having children, what does that do for your overall career trajectory and the time that you're participating in the workforce? And we really want equal representation from men and women in the workforce. So it's important to call that out in this slide. Moving on to the next slide, the proverbial elephant in the room that many of us are already aware of is the income gap between men and women. Looking at San Diego alone, these numbers are staggering. Women make, on average, about $43,000 for every $68,000 on average men make in our economy. And there's just no reason for that. These are the kinds of numbers that we got to focus on as a community. And as we as nonprofit professionals invest in where do we create programs, when we're doing program design and investing our grants into the community, we've got to recognize these inequalities and create programs that help address this. Moving on to the topic of race and ethnicity, and particularly for the Black community, as we know that's top of mind for so many of us in the community. We have been studying the youth disconnection rate for some time in San Diego County, and have seen that compared to other large cities, as you're seeing on this slide, we have some of the highest disparities in youth disconnection. We define youth as individuals who are 16 to 24, who are not working and not in school. And we have some of the highest, rates of disconnection in the country. I'm seeing a question come in, so I'll pause there. Yeah, great question. Are you finding that people are having issues finding daycare again so that they can return back to work? Does your organization provide resources to help in individuals and families to access daycare? Thank you, Stacy, for that question. So happy you asked that. We're super proud that our county supervisors, city council members, the state of California came together to help create a voucher program for essential workers and look at safe ways we can reopen daycares. If you go to our website, workforce.org/COVID-19, there's more information about what we and our county is doing to try and provide resources for individuals to take advantage of daycare. The other sad truth is, whether that resource is available or not, many parents are concerned, even if they have the opportunity to get subsidized daycare or get funding to help pay for daycare. They're worried. They have legitimate health concerns about what does that mean for their family's health, for their child's health, of bringing their kids back to daycare. And to that I say, that is why it is critical that we're working with our employers and talking about two-generational supports, because we can't support our workers if we're not also supporting their children. So maybe that means as employers that we are more flexible with working from home for parents. Maybe it means we're allowing parents to bring their kids to work if there's not daycare available. These are critical points that we have to address. I think, pandemic or not, access to childcare is a huge barrier for our parents and our workforce, and we need to be providing more resources. So go to our website, workforce.org. We have a lot more information here on two-generational supports. Thank you so much for that question. Moving on to the next slide. It's not just youth being disconnected from work and school. I think we focus a lot on resources for youth because we want to prevent disparities from happening and make sure that their first job and their education is launched. But it's happening now for adults as well. So looking at San Diego, white workers make twice the income of black workers. And I think we can all agree that that is not because any race or ethnicity is more deserving of more income. It is systemic racism. It is our unconscious biases that lead to these disparities. And our data proves that. I want us to be bold and brave in addressing these issues and not shy away from these tough topics. There's really no other explanation when you're seeing a gap this high. And it's not just this data, we have more. Going on to the next slide. We can't just look at income, because people can deny, maybe it's education level, maybe it's jobs that are available, but you have to look at not just what people are taking home, but overall wealth. If we're really getting to the root of systemic racism, you have to look at access to capital, access to housing, being able to get a loan to purchase a house. And that's what this median family wealth shows. Not just what are the disparities in income, but this is just, to me, a staggering, sorry, I hit my microphone, a staggering and just frankly heartbreaking data point to share for our San Diego community, that there is this large a gap in wealth between our white families and our black and Hispanic or Latinx families. And it's something that we've really got to invest more of our time and resources as a community in addressing. Even more salient to us as workforce development professionals and looking at job opportunities, I want to share a study that was done by an independent agency both in 2003 and in 2009, and it's looking at job applicants. And it is taking the exact same fictitious resume, same experience level, same education level, and doing two things. One, assigning names that traditionally sound white, like John Smith, and names that traditionally sound black, like Jamal, and putting them on the same resume and assigning both with criminal records and without. And what the next slide will show is how many of those fictitious records got called back. And this to me is just a staggering statistic. If you are white with a clean record, you're almost 4 times more likely to get a call back if the name on your resume is a name that sounds white, compared to applicants with the same fictitious resume with a black sounding name. And it's just, I get emotional sharing these slides because it's, I think, a data point that really illustrates the deep and unnerving challenges we're facing as a society and the unconscious bias that is there. These employers were trying to make hiring decisions they felt were best for their bottom line. And that is why when I say one of our strategic pillars is inclusive business growth, it is to help address problems like these, help identify that this is not just a perception issue. These are independent studies and data points being done, collecting research and information to demonstrate when we talk about inequities in access and inequities in opportunities, this is what we're talking about. Another thing we have to look at, because criminal records are intrinsically linked to our ability to make an income, access jobs, and gain wealth, and that's something we care about as a workforce development agencies, that if you are black in San Diego, you are 5 times more likely to get prosecuted for minor drug offenses than your peers who are white and Hispanic. The San Diego Police Department, and this numbers is coming from the ACLU, stop black folks at 3 times the rate of white folks. and sheriffs at 2 times the rate. And if you're black, it's 50% more likely that the police may use force when they're engaging with you. So I wanted to share that slide because we're talking a lot about policing in America. We're talking here today about inequities in wealth and the crisis we're facing, and we have to acknowledge what that looks like in San Diego and the challenges we're facing. We're an institution that exists to help create pathways to jobs and education. And so another staggering statistic is that the same amount of people that have a college degree have a criminal record in America. That is not a number we can accept or should be okay with. We have as many people with a barrier to employment, a criminal justice record, as we do people who have college degrees. And we've really got to change our priorities as a community and as a nation to change those numbers. In California, black Californians have the highest felony record of any state. If we move on to the next slide, or this point shows, not only did my prior slide show that having a criminal record is a barrier to employment, but in addition to that, many jobs, many employers, whether that's the state of California, city of San Diego, private industry, many employers have regulations and laws that just won't accept someone with a criminal record, won't even allow someone with a criminal record, someone involved in the justice system, to apply. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in next slides. So this illustrates we, San Diego County, have 2 career centers in our jails. We're so proud to be working with our partners at County Sheriff's Department and Probation Department. They're wonderful partners in helping us bring our resources for job training and careers. There's wonderful job training programs to help folks who are currently incarcerated get job skills so that when they're released, those job skills can be transferred. Unfortunately, programs like if you're a barber in the justice system, or you're training to be a firefighter in the justice system, those are careers where those 2,400 laws I mentioned on the previous slide, those folks are prevented. Prevented from getting those jobs. So how crazy it is that we're investing funding to train people for work when they're institutionalized in our correction system, but when they're released back in society, the Cosmetology Licensing Board of the state of California says, nope, if you have a criminal record, if you have a felony, you can't be a barber. Those are the kind of laws in employment that we need to unpack, that we need to identify. I'm not calling for a massive sweep saying, every felon should automatically be able to apply to be a kindergarten teacher. No, this is a complex issue. We need to look at job by job, opportunity by opportunity. And when we poll San Diego employers and ask the question, how likely are you to hire someone with a criminal record? What we hear resoundingly, overwhelmingly, what San Diego businesses say is, it depends on the crime. They want to be open-minded, and they don't want these laws prohibiting folks. We want to ban the box and allow folks to come forward and, no matter your record, at least have the same opportunity to submit your resume and apply. I talk a lot about the justice system, and we talk a lot about racial and ethnic injustices in our community, because when we look at crime and incarceration, the number one factor, and this is reported by SANDAG, our own research supports this as well, is the top 2 things we hear from the community that is needed is stable housing and employment. So what are we doing about this? I shared a lot of statistics that are sad, that are shocking, that are depressing, and I want to bring this kind of tail end of my presentation into solutions and what can we do. These are just a few of our programs. We have many different grant programs, but we are intentional about how do we do outreach, how do we serve the communities of highest need. So proud that we're not only tracking, but actively setting goals and targets and investing our funding, investing our programming to right these injustices. Our Tech Hire program with the city of San Diego, for example, it exists to recognize that the tech community, one of our largest sectors in San Diego, our fastest growing sector in San Diego, is overwhelmingly white and overwhelmingly male. So we're proud to receive funding, proud to partner with the city of San Diego on our Tech Hire program to focus on communities of color, to focus on low-income communities, provide job training and internship opportunities in some of our biggest tech employers. That's just one example of many programs we're offering, and I'll talk a little bit more. I want to shift too about what does our programming and services look like in a time of COVID, and I think this is relevant to all nonprofit professionals like yourself who are engaged today and trying to learn more about strategies in the community. I mentioned our website. We quickly had to adjust our landing page. I mentioned earlier that we have about 20,000 visitors across the county, typically in person, that no longer could come in person. So we quickly shifted to create a clearinghouse on our website. Everyone going to workforce.org, whether you're a worker or a business, if you clicked those two buttons at the top, every single resource, whether that's childcare that I got a question on earlier, or all of the programs and services, businesses and workers can go there to click and find out more. Also, our career portal, an online jobs database, job portal of local regional jobs that are hiring. And this isn't Indeed. The biggest difference between our career portal and an Indeed or a Monster.com is that our team has curated these jobs. We've spoke to the hiring manager, and we're reviewing your resume before making that connection point to the employer to make sure that that is a job that fits your strengths, skills, and interests and meets the employer. So it's a warm handoff and not kind of a cold job posting like you've seen in Indeed. And then training is online as well, and I'll get to that in later slides. This is a look at our career portal. So you sign up here and log in. We have job opportunities. Not only that, not only are we sharing these job opportunities, but we have paid work experience. So we're helping create that buy-in for the employer. If you work with us, we'll help subsidize some of those salaries if you're hiring from our communities. And then one-on-one support as well. We've got job coaches standing by to help you tweak that resume and connect to jobs that are most relevant to you. It's a quick look at what the portal, once you get online and see, you can search by city. So no matter where you are in the county, you can look at, and I think before I came here today, we had over 200 jobs listed where we have a warm relationship with that employer, have spoken to that hiring manager, and they're waiting to get our talent and our folks coming through our portal there. So unemployment benefits. If you've turned on the news in the past few months, you've probably seen a lot of people struggling to gain access to their unemployment benefits. While we are state-funded programs and funded by EDD, we are a separate entity. We don't offer unemployment insurance benefits, the state does. So here's a look at kind of the differences. A lot of times people are calling us, they're engaging with us because they have questions about their claim or they haven't heard back on their claim. And so we want to provide as much support to those people, but also clarify where folks can go to get information. So the next slide shows us questions coming in. How do you connect with those who may not have internet access at home or available elsewhere due to the pandemic? It's a great question, and it's one of the #1 challenges that we face is for all of the folks in the community we're trying to engage with who don't have access to internet or don't have computers at home. This is where our 501c part of our work, our independent nonprofiting, comes in, because we can go to partners like Microsoft, James Irvine Foundation, Bank of America, just to name a few of our private philanthropists who are engaging in our work. We, at the launch of the pandemic, got 200 computers that we were able to offer for free to disconnected youth, Wi-Fi enabled computers that we could deploy to young San Diegans disconnected from work. 200 computers is just a drop in the bucket. And when we're seeing the numbers and the need. So what we're preparing to do now is reopen our career centers and do that in a safe and healthy way. So those computer labs that people can usually walk in off the street and access, in the coming weeks are going to be coming back online. And so if folks don't have internet access at home or elsewhere, our computer labs will be readily available. Public libraries are another good place, so encourage job seekers to go there to look for support. Most of you probably are already aware, but this is a look at what is the total benefits that EDD offers. Again, we don't offer this cash benefits, but we work closely with EDD. Should we try and share this information to help our job seekers, help local San Diegans connect to these benefits. Pandemic assistance, the $600 a week, I do want to call out is sunsetting. So if you or someone you know have been impacted by the pandemic, have lost your job, that additional benefits will start on a sliding scale to go away. So make sure that the number one thing is, if you've been laid off, make a claim, file that week, because benefits start the week that you were laid off. So file as within that first week so that the benefits can retroactively be applied throughout that time period. While we want to help you go over your claim, and I know the online system that the state EDD can be confusing, we cannot answer specific questions related to unemployment. Because the benefits have grown and federal stimulus money is coming in, sometimes unemployment is being extended, eligibility is the best people to answer your questions about unemployment is EDD. So those phone numbers are there. The best method of filing is online. And I'll just say, we're hearing the frustrations of many customers and not getting through, long wait times on the calls. We hear those frustrations and we're empathetic to how difficult it is. We went from about 2,000 unemployment claims being processed a week to tens of thousands. So it's taking time. My advice is not to give up hope. Keep calling those numbers, keep calling, go online, keep claiming. We host a webinar every Friday, so tomorrow at 10 a.m., if you go to our website, link listed there on the slide, we bring in folks from the state. So an EDD representative is on our live webinar for San Diegans. It's via Zoom. You can ask questions live, just like we are in this conference, to the EDD rep. So if people are confused, if they're not getting through, maybe they're self-employed and they're not sure if they qualify or not, these are the questions they can ask. And by the way, if you're self-employed, you do qualify for unemployment insurance. Looking at the next slide, talking about virtual services and some of the things that we've done. All of our Career Center staff, all of our career coaches are working from home. They've got laptops, they've got phones. We're standing by to connect with you, still offer job search assistance. Our enrollment process, like many community programs, used to be done via paper forms when you'd come into the community and engage with us. We've moved that all online, and for nonprofits out there, highly recommend DocuSign. Banks use it, financial institutions use it. You can put your federal forms or any enrollment forms of trying to get sensitive customer information into DocuSign and get people enrolled. We're having live workshops on career services via Zoom, as well as just an online in-demand training library you can go to, as well, and paid training provider programs. We have over 75 online certifications for in-demand jobs where we can help pay for training at institutions like USD, UC San Diego, and other key education partners throughout the county. We're looking at virtual job seeker services. So I mentioned our on-demand training services. If you can't wait for an online Zoom workshop, these are curated content, including hard skills certifications. So it's not just how to brush up your resume, but We have Salesforce tech certifications, Microsoft certifications, hard job skills, all curated, relevant to our San Diego market. They're going to help you, if you are unemployed, get back onto a path of employment. So highly recommend sending folks to that link to access this free training at any time. 7 days a week, any day or time, folks can access. We also are working on an emergency grant released by the state of California to expand our services to those dislocated by COVID-19. I mentioned our career portal already. Another resource that we've implemented, and thanks to the generosity of Microsoft, we were able to get an online chat tool. So if anyone goes to our website, there's a Chat With Us Now button. It is a robot for the most part. It'll answer questions automatically, like AI technology, about our programs and services. But if the robot detects that we aren't answering your question or detects frustration, it transfers to one of our live agents. And a human being is there to help answer questions and engage with our job seekers, engage with our businesses. Microsoft is not the only agency that offers tools like this, but for a relatively low cost, it's a great way to instantly chat online with people who you're otherwise missing because you can't engage with in person. And then I mentioned our on-demand training videos as well. So other strategies that nonprofits should be thinking about during the time, and leadership and ideas that we're finding valuable during the time of COVID-19. Super proud of our High Roads Kitchen project. If you go to our next slide, this program is in partnership with the San Diego Foundation. It is really the culmination of multiple community providers coming together to help solve multiple problems. One is food insecurity, and with paychecks going missing, how are we feeding folks? The other is getting meals to our frontline workers, and the other is working with restaurant industries to make sure that they're employing folks and not laying off folks. So we were able to bring in our wage subsidy programs, match funds from the San Diego Foundation, and help San Diego employers who are committed to fair wages, giving their employees fair wages and benefits, keep them online by subsidizing some of those wages. And not only that, but give essential workers and community members in needs food during a time of crisis. If we go to the next slide, super proud. These are the partners: High Road Kitchen Project, the Cooking Project, One Fair Wage, San Diego. City of San Diego is partnering with us on this. If we go to the next slide. These are our two restaurants in San Diego. Ponce's and Super Cucina are the first two. We're trying to bring on more restaurants. So if people are looking in this engage, it's really a bottom line. It helps our restaurants, helps our frontline workers, helps keep people employed in the restaurant industry, and provide food to frontline workers. We're looking for more restaurants to come on board, so contact us for more information there. I want to sum up, I talked a lot about job quality in how this is a bottom line issue, how our workforce needs to be prepared, and so these, in conclusion, are some strategies I think are relevant for all nonprofits. Looking inward, one, embed in your procurement processes, your purchasing processes, your contracts, principles that align with job quality and facing injustice. So for us, that means looking at minority-owned business, women-owned businesses, our hiring practices, and creating opportunities for those communities in need. We call this social justice purchasing, social justice procurement processes. It's putting your money where your mouth is. Two, supporting equitable recovery. So using our wage subsidy dollars to fund that gap in wages, not just for any employer, but our employers that are giving fair wages to their employees. Let's invest our funding on the job training and contracted training, and those employers who are committed to give sustainable wages to their employees. Fueling creativity, any new programs that you're creating, whether that's serving the homeless, serving any of our community members in need, thinking about job quality and quality job placements as a metric for success. Looking at workforce justice not just as a bottom line issue, but something that lifts up employment. It helps employers with attraction, development, and retention of staff. It's not just checking a diversity box, as so many have thought about it in the past, but truly a mechanism for success in the economy. Providing a space to make informed decision. Job quality might look different for different job seekers. For me, I don't have children of my own, so flexibility in hours or daycare is less of an issue as maybe career growth is or professional development. You may have different health issues, so health benefits may be critically important for one person and less important for another. Maybe someone's partner has great health benefits at their job that covers the family, so a wage is more important than benefits there. So helping our community members in job placement understand that job quality might look different, and we should help our job seekers make an informed decision on the career pathway that's most relevant to them and their family's needs. And lastly, partnering with a purpose. Looking at job quality as a metric to bring people around a common goal. So sharing standards of excellence, sharing best practices, coming together to look at, the rising tide lifts all boats. This isn't something that we should do just because we're caring, compassionate, nonprofit professionals, which we are, but looking at this as something that is a standard of excellence, and we can all partner around common goals and common impacts metrics that help us further our mission. I believe that is our last slide, so I'm going to pause here and see if there's any questions for me. My email address was also shared on the slides. It's Andrew Picard, my first and last name, at workforce.org. As well, you'll see on this slide our Twitter handle, our hashtag, our website again. Please reach out to me. I'm passionate about these issues. I love to share this information. This is data and research that's relevant, I think, to nonprofit professionals in any industry. Workforce development, career opportunities for all is an intersectional topic. Income mobility and addressing the wealth gaps is an intersectional topic. It's not just something that plagues the white and black community, but all aspects of our life, and is something that we as a San Diego community need to think about going forward.